Welcome to Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is about power and politics, and our topic for today is conflict resolution. Given the state of the world, it's an important topic, and it's one that's fascinated anthropologists for years. As you recall, anthropologists historically have studied primarily small-scale societies. In small-scale societies, conflict is resolved somewhat differently than we find happening today. For example, in small-scale societies where everyone has to get along with each other in order to survive, it's important that conflict be resolved in such a way that everyone continues to live harmoniously. That doesn't mean that conflict won't exist. Conflict between men over women, for example, is a common type of conflict that must be resolved. In some small groups, particularly hunting and gathering groups or groups that are nomadic, this conflict is resolved simply by one party moving apart from another party, splitting the band, as it were. In other cases, a power figure has been designated in advance, and because that individual has power within the group, he's able to resolve conflict simply by making a decision and saying, "That's the way it is." However, much more common among slightly larger groups is either the process of mediation or adjudication. The process of mediation is an interesting one, and it's one that you may associate nowadays with things like divorce proceedings, where it's important that both the father and the mother be able to get along in the long run for the benefit of the children. Mediation thus takes the stance that neither party is necessarily right nor wrong, but somehow or another must learn to get along with each other. Among tribes in Africa, for example, sometimes a moot, which is a form of court, is established to resolve conflicts. In the moot, everyone agrees that this is going to be the conflict resolution proceedings, and everyone gets to speak their mind. When I say everyone, I mean everyone, no matter how long it takes, no matter how much they have to say. Obviously, this can take a very long period of time, but what happens is sometimes problems resolve themselves during that period of time. As everyone sits around a tribal council, for example, discussing why a man wants to return a bride because she's been infertile for the last 2 years. The man's point of view is she needs to produce children. The woman's point of view, or rather her parents', her family's point of view, is that the cows that the man gave them for the woman were worthless. One of them got sick and died, another of them ran away, and the remaining 3 are puny and don't give much milk, and therefore he shouldn't be able to give the bride back. Maybe she's a little defective, but so were the cows. So the dispute goes on. After a couple weeks of this, or maybe even a couple of days, everybody has to get back to work. They can't simply sit around arguing all the time. So they take a break. The break may be for 3 or 4 months, depending on how long it takes before everyone has some free time again. Everyone has free time again. They come back together. They may talk another couple weeks, and then they've got to get back to work. 3 months later, they come back and talk again. Everybody's got more to say. Now, one of the cows has produced twin calves, making it a little bit better in terms of cows. But the man's family, on the other hand, who's demanding the cows back, find that all of a sudden they like the woman because she's helping out a little bit more around the house, and they don't want her returned, even though the man still does. So things get more and more complicated. A year later, maybe something else has changed in the process of mediation. Perhaps the woman's gotten pregnant in that interval of time. Perhaps the family that the woman came from has had another daughter or a cousin now come of age and be ready for marriage, and she's given to the man in exchange for the wife or in addition to the wife in order to compensate him and not have to return the cows. Lots of things can happen. The process of mediation is one in which everybody gets heard, in which problems are resolved through a long-term process of negotiation, and it provides the basis for what most people feel is the best method of conflict resolution. Adjudication is mediation with a slight twist. In adjudication, there is some powerful mechanism, either a person or a council that votes, that has absolute power over the decision-making process and can at some point say, okay, it's over, this is how things are going to get resolved. As you can see, both of these models provide a basis for conflict resolution, and they're what people in more traditional cultures are accustomed to using. In modern Western culture, we tend to use a process of finding fault and punishing the guilty. Finding fault and punishing the guilty is typically not workable in smaller scale societies because the labor of everyone is needed. You can't afford prisons, and you can't afford to banish people who the tribe needs in order to get the work done. Instead, restitution is used when someone is found to be at fault. For example, in New Guinea, a man driving drunk may run down another man and kill him. Okay. The man who was killed has a family to support. His family demands restitution. Instead of throwing the drunk driver in jail, the system demands that he pay restitution to the other family. This may mean he has to pay them a monetary sum equivalent to the work value of the man that was killed. It may mean that he has to go work for them if he has no money for a set period of years. It means his labor continues to be contributed to society. It means that the man's family is taken care of, the man who was killed, and it means that the man who was the drunk driver continues at the same time to be able to see and function within his own family. Everyone, it seems, is better off, except of course the man who was killed. Our society, on the other hand, might put this person in jail. No one is really better off in that situation. The taxpayer has to pay for him to be in jail. His family loses the benefit of a father. The victim's family loses any type of restitution because now that he's in prison, he certainly can't make any money to pay them any money. Restitution is another manner of conflict resolution. As you can see, our typical methods of conflict resolution, where we find fault and punish the guilty, are a model that is not used around the world for conflict resolution. Likewise, many cultures around the world don't understand the American need to rush to justice, point a finger, accuse someone, convict them of guilt, and punish them either through imprisonment